April 5th, 1945. 0:24 hours. Kakazu Ridge, Okinawa. Heavy fog rolled in from the East China Sea like a grey curtain dropping across the battlefield. Within minutes, visibility collapsed from 200 yards to 15 feet. Private First Class James Theodore Brennan crouched in his foxhole and watched the world disappear. The M3 carbine lay across his lap. 28 pounds of experimental weapon, a scope the size of a coffee can bolted to the receiver, a cable snaking from the scope to a battery pack strapped against his spine, 13 pounds of lead-acid cells, identical to what powered automobile engines back in California. The weight pressed into his vertebrae with every breath. But this was not the battery the army had issued him. This was something else, something forbidden, something that could get him shot by firing squad before sunrise. Brennan activated the system. The car battery hummed against his back. 4,250 volts surging through copper wire, powering an infrared spotlight and an image converter tube that turned invisible light into visible pictures. Technology so advanced, the army classified it top secret. Technology so rare, only 150 men in the entire Pacific Theater had ever fired one in combat. He shouldered the carbine and looked through the scope. The field of view was narrow, 10 degrees, like looking through a soda straw. He scanned slowly, sweeping left to right across the fog-shrouded terrain. Green-grey static, rocks, vegetation, nothing else. Then he saw them. 8 shapes moving through the fog at 40 yards, multiple contacts, advancing in a skirmish line. Japanese infiltrators. They moved low to the ground, rifles held tight against their bodies, using the fog as cover. With the naked eye, Brennan could not have seen them at 10 feet. With a standard M3 carbine under normal conditions, he could have engaged them at 70 yards in total darkness. But fog was not normal conditions. The Army's technical specifications were clear. Fog reduced the M3's effective range by 50%. 70 yards became 35, maybe 40 on a good night. These infiltrators were at the edge of that reduced capability. Any farther, and they would be invisible even to the most advanced night vision system in the American arsenal. Except, Brennan's M3 was not standard. 3 nights ago he had done something forbidden, something that violated direct orders from division command, something that could result in a court-martial, something that in a combat zone carried a maximum penalty of death by firing squad. He had modified the weapon. The modification was simple: a single lens salvaged from Japanese binoculars, ground down to fit inside the infrared spotlight housing, a brass shim cut from an artillery shell casing to maintain proper alignment, a watch spring to hold tension. Total cost in materials, 50 cents. Total labor, 3 nights of work after lights out, hands bleeding from file work, eyes burning from close precision in dim light. The modification doubled the scope's penetration in fog. 35 yards became 60, maybe 70 if conditions were right. Brennan placed the green crosshairs on the lead infiltrator. 58 yards, center mass. The man was crawling forward, completely unaware he was being watched, completely unaware that an American soldier could see him moving through fog that should have made him invisible. Brennan squeezed the trigger. The carbine fired. The muzzle flash was minimal, suppressed by a conical flash hider. The sound was sharp, but muffled by wet air and dense vegetation. The lead infiltrator jerked once and collapsed face down in the mud. The second man in the line froze, looked left, looked right, saw nothing. The fog was too thick. He could not see where the shot had come from, could not see the American position, could not see the invisible infrared light painting him in targeting illumination. Brennan fired again. The second man dropped. The remaining 6 infiltrators broke formation. Some went to ground. Others began moving, trying to flank, trying to locate the shooter. But they were moving blind, firing at sounds, at shadows, at ghosts. Brennan tracked the third man through the scope. 52 yards, moving right, fired. The man spun and fell. Fourth man, 48 yards, running now, panicked, fired, down. Fifth and sixth together, 45 yards, crouched behind a coral outcropping. Brennan waited. One of them rose to look over the rock. Fired. The man's head snapped back. His body fell backward. The second man stayed down for 10 seconds, then tried to retreat. Brennan tracked the movement. Fired. He stopped moving.
Seventh man at 38 yards. Eighth man at 32 yards.
Both advancing fast now, desperate, knowing their position was compromised but unable to see the threat. Brennan fired twice in quick succession. Both shapes collapsed. The engagement lasted 47 seconds. 8 shots. 8 enemy soldiers dead. 0 American casualties in Brennan's sector. He kept the scope active and continued scanning. His heart hammered against his ribs, but his hands remained steady. The green image in the scope showed 8 motionless bodies scattered across 40 yards of fog-shrouded ground. No additional movement, no reinforcements. The infiltration attempt had been stopped cold. From the foxhole 60 feet to his left, a voice called out in the darkness. "Brennan, what the hell are you shooting at?" Private Eddie Walsh, 19 years old, Pittsburgh, been in country 3 weeks. Walsh could not see what Brennan was shooting at. The fog was too thick, even with the sound of gunfire, even with 8 enemy soldiers lying dead less than 50 yards away. Walsh's world was limited to 15 feet of grey murk and imagination. "Infiltrators," Brennan called back. 8 of them, 40 to 60 yards out. Silence for 3 seconds, then Walsh's voice again, higher-pitched, uncertain. "I don't see anything." "I do." Another pause. "Your scope, it's working in the fog." "Yes." "But I thought, I read the specs. M3 can't see past 35 in fog." Brennan said nothing. Let the silence stretch. Let Walsh work it out. "Brennan, did you modify that weapon?" Still silence. "Jesus Christ, Brennan, they'll court-martial you. Division put out an order 3 days ago. Any soldier modifying M3 equipment faces immediate charges." "I know." "Then why did you?" "Because it works." Walsh went quiet. The fog pressed down. Somewhere to the south, the distant crump of artillery. Somewhere closer, the sound of men breathing in foxholes, waiting for dawn, waiting to see what the night had brought. At 02:47 hours, the fog began to lift. Visibility increased from 15 feet to 30, then 50, then 100. By 03:10 hours, the air was clear enough to see across the defensive perimeter. Captain Robert Morrison arrived at Brennan's position at 03:15 hours. He was 32 years old, Nebraska, regular army, had been through Guadalcanal and Saipan, knew what combat looked like, knew what discipline looked like, knew the difference between following orders and saving lives, and knew that difference was sometimes measured in bodies. "Private Brennan," Morrison said, "bring your weapon." Brennan climbed out of the foxhole and handed over the M3. Morrison examined it under a flashlight, turned the scope housing over in his hands, studied the infrared spotlight assembly, saw immediately what should not have been there, a lens that did not match Army specifications, a piece of glass with Japanese optical markings visible on the edge. Morrison looked at the lens, looked at Brennan, looked back at the lens. "Where did you get this?" "Salvage from enemy binoculars, sir." "You put Japanese optics into American classified equipment?" "Yes, sir." Morrison clicked off the flashlight, stood in the darkness for 5 seconds. When he spoke again, his voice was flat, controlled, the tone of a man doing something he did not want to do, but had no choice about. "Walk with me." They walked the perimeter. Morrison counted bodies. 8 Japanese soldiers, all dead from rifle fire, all positioned between 40 and 60 yards from Brennan's foxhole, all located in terrain where standard M3 capability and fog conditions would have made engagement impossible. Morrison stopped at the 8th body, crouched down, studied the entry wound, rose, turned to face Brennan. 3 other sectors tonight, 7 Americans killed by infiltrators during the fog. Your sector, 0 casualties, 8 enemy dead. Brennan said nothing. Division issued a direct order on April 3rd. Do not modify M3 equipment. Unauthorized alterations will result in court-martial. You received that order? No, sir, did not receive it. Doesn't matter. Legally, order was issued. Violation occurred. I have to report this. Yes, sir. How many did you save tonight, Brennan? Don't know, sir. Those 8 infiltrators were heading for the CP. Command post had 4 officers and 6 enlisted inside. None of them had rifles. They were studying maps. If those 8 had reached the CP, Morrison did not finish, did not need to. You saved 10 men, minimum, probably more, but that doesn't change what you did. Understood, sir. Morrison looked at the modified M3, looked at the 8 bodies, looked at Brennan, made a decision. Report to Division HQ at 0900 tomorrow. Bring your weapon. Court-martial proceedings will be initiated. Until then, you are confined to your position. No contact with other personnel, except in combat emergency. Yes, sir. Morrison turned to leave, stopped, turned back. One more thing. How long does it take to teach someone to make this modification? Brennan understood immediately what Morrison was asking, understood what it meant, understood the risk Morrison was taking. 6 hours, sir, if they have basic mechanical aptitude. Can you write instructions? Yes, sir. Morrison nodded once. Write them tonight. Have them ready at 0800. I'll send 3 armorers to your position. You'll teach them. Then you'll go to Division HQ for your court-martial. Sir, if I teach them and Division finds out, they'll charge you too. Let me worry about Division. Morrison's voice was hard. You know what kills Marines in this war, Private? It's not Japanese bullets. It's American bureaucracy. It's engineers in Virginia who write specifications without fighting in fog. It's generals who issue orders without understanding what happens at 0300 when you can't see 15 feet. You fixed a problem they couldn't fix. Saved lives they would have lost. I'm not letting that die with your court-martial. Morrison left. Brennan sat in his foxhole and stared at the M3 carbine, stared at the Japanese lens visible inside the spotlight housing, stared at the modification that worked exactly as designed. That saved 10 lives tonight. That would result in him standing before a firing squad in less than 72 hours, unless something changed. He thought about Sergeant Mike O'Connor, thought about 3 nights ago, thought about how this all started. To understand how a 22-year-old private ended up modifying classified equipment in violation of direct orders, facing possible execution for saving American lives, you need to go back. Back before Okinawa. Back before the M3 carbine. Back before the war. Back to Millfield, California. Population 743, 1938. Millfield sat in the Central Valley between Fresno and Bakersfield. 1 main street, 1 grocery, 1 gas station, 1 church, 1 school. Fields of cotton and alfalfa stretching to the horizon in every direction. The kind of town where everyone knew everyone, where nothing changed, where people were born and died within 20 miles of the same spot. The Brennan family were Irish on the father's side, German on the mother's. Theodore Brennan Sr. had immigrated in 1920 from County Cork, worked in the fields for 8 years, saved every dollar, opened a radio repair shop on Main Street in 1928, married Margaret O'Reilly in 1929. James Theodore Brennan was born in 1923. They called him Theo. Theo grew up in the back room of that shop, grew up surrounded by vacuum tubes and capacitors and transformers and the smell of hot solder, grew up watching his father's hands move with precision, testing circuits, replacing components, bringing dead radios back to life. Ted Brennan taught his son 3 skills that would 17 years later save over 1,000 American lives on a Pacific island 8,000 miles away. The first skill, seeing the invisible. Theo was 9 years old. A customer had brought in a Philco console radio, beautiful wooden cabinet, dead as a stone, no sound, no static, nothing. Ted let Theo watch as he troubleshot the problem, did not open the cabinet, did not touch the components, just sat in thought, explained his reasoning. Electricity is invisible, Theo. You cannot see current flowing through wire, cannot see voltage across a resistor, cannot see signal moving through a circuit, but you can understand it. You can know it by logic. Ted touched the power cord. Current enters here, moves to transformer. Transformer steps down voltage. Voltage feeds tubes. Tubes amplify signal. Signal drives speaker. Somewhere in that path, current stops. Our job is to know where without seeing. He opened the cabinet, checked the transformer with a voltmeter. No output. Removed the transformer. Showed Theo the burnt winding inside. See? Invisible problem. But we knew it was there because we understood the path. That lesson stayed. Understanding invisible systems by logic and pattern recognition. That skill would later allow Theo to troubleshoot an infrared spotlight system in total darkness, using only touch and sound and reasoning. The second skill, building from salvage. Theo was 12. A customer brought in a Crosley radio that had been dropped, cabinet smashed, chassis bent, multiple components broken. The customer was poor, could not afford a new radio, could not afford expensive repairs. Ted looked at the damage and told the customer he was sorry. The radio was beyond repair. The customer left disappointed. Theo asked if he could have the broken radio. Ted said yes, waste not. Theo spent 2 weeks in the back room,
Salvaged parts from 3 other junked radios, used a transformer from one, tubes from another, speaker from a third, cut new chassis from sheet metal, soldered connections, tested, adjusted, rebuilt the entire radio from scrap. Total cost, $3.70 for solder and wire. When the customer returned a month later, Theo showed him the rebuilt radio. It worked perfectly. The customer offered $8. Theo accepted, gave the money to his father. Ted studied the radio, studied his son, said 4 words. You see, true function. What he meant? Theo did not see a radio as a fixed object that must work one specific way. He saw it as a collection of functions: power conversion, signal amplification, audio output. As long as those functions were present, the specific components did not matter. Form followed function, not the reverse. That skill would later allow Theo to see an M3 infrared spotlight not as a sealed unit that must remain untouched, but as a function that could be improved with alternative components. The third skill, precision under pressure. Theo was 14, August, 104 degrees. The town's telephone switchboard failed. Complete failure. No calls in or out. The nearest phone company repair crew was 60 miles away in Bakersfield, could not arrive until the next day. The mayor was desperate. The town doctor needed to coordinate with the hospital in Fresno. A farmer needed to call a veterinarian for a sick horse worth $2,000. Business owners needed to conduct business. The switchboard had to work. The mayor knew Ted worked with electrical systems, asked if he could help. Ted looked at the switchboard and said this was telephone equipment, not radio equipment, different systems. He could not help. Theo asked if he could try. The mayor, desperate, said yes. Theo spent 4 hours inside the switchboard. 108 degrees in the small equipment room, sweat dripping into his eyes, hands shaking from heat exhaustion. But he worked with precision, traced every connection, found the failed relay. No replacement parts available. Improvised a solution using watch springs and solder and wire from a broken telegraph key. At 1900 hours, the switchboard came back online. Every line functional. The mayor paid Ted $20. Ted gave it all to Theo. That night, Ted told his son something important. Precision under pressure is the rarest skill. Many men work well when comfortable. Few work well when the body wants to quit. You have this skill. It will save your life someday. He was right. 7 years later, on a fog-shrouded ridge in Okinawa, Theo would modify an infrared spotlight in near total darkness, with hands bleeding from file work and eyes burning from close focus.
And that modification would save not just his life, but the lives of hundreds. These 3 skills learned in a small-town repair shop would become the foundation of an innovation that changed modern warfare. But in 1938, Theo was just a kid fixing radios. The war was 3 years away. The M3 carbine did not exist yet. The concept of infrared night vision was still theoretical research in a laboratory somewhere. Theo had no idea that the skills his father taught him would matter beyond Millfield. had no idea he would ever leave California, had no idea his life was about to be torn apart by forces far beyond his control. December 7th, 1941. Sunday morning, Pearl Harbor. The next day, Theo walked to school and found the radio shop's front window smashed. Someone had thrown a brick through the glass. Someone had painted 4 words on the door in red paint. Kraut, go home. Ted spent the day cleaning glass and scraping paint. Customers stopped coming. People who had been friendly for 13 years crossed the street to avoid walking past the shop. The mayor, who had paid $20 for the switchboard repair, did not acknowledge Ted when they passed on the sidewalk. The problem was simple. Ted Brennan had family in Germany, a brother in Munich, cousins in Bavaria. In peacetime, this meant nothing. In wartime, it meant everything. February 19, 1942. President Roosevelt signed Executive Order 9066. All persons of Japanese ancestry on the West Coast would be relocated to internment camps. For their own protection, the government said, for national security. What most people did not know, the order also applied to selected German Americans and Italian Americans deemed security risks. Not all, just those with documented family connections to the Axis powers. Those who had traveled to Germany in the previous 10 years, those who had sent money to relatives overseas. Ted Brennan met every criteria. FBI agents arrived in Millfield on March 8th, gave the Brennan family 3 days to prepare. They could bring what they could carry. Everything else would be left behind. Ted sold the shop to a man from Fresno for $200. The shop and equipment were worth at least $5,000. The buyer knew it, Ted knew it, but there was no time to negotiate. No other buyers. 200 or nothing. On March 11th, military police loaded the Brennan family onto a bus. The bus did not drive to Manzanar. That camp was for Japanese Americans. The Brennans were sent somewhere different, Crystal City, Texas, a camp in the scrubland 60 miles from the Mexican border, barbed wire fence, guard towers, barracks built to hold enemy aliens, German Americans, Italian Americans, Japanese Americans, all together, all American citizens, all imprisoned without trial. Ted and Margaret were sent to Crystal City. Theo was 18, old enough that the government classified him separately. He was sent to live with a foster family in Sacramento. The foster family were Quakers, kind people. They gave him a room and food and treated him well, but they were not his parents. Theo got a job at a defense plant, soldering circuits for radio equipment, 12-hour shifts, 6 days a week, sent most of his pay to his mother, saved the rest. The war continued. Months became a year. Theo turned 19, 20. The news from the Pacific was bad. Guadalcanal, Tarawa, casualty lists in the newspapers, boys from California dying on islands with names nobody could pronounce. August 1943. Theo turned 20. Walked into an army recruiting station in Sacramento. The recruiter looked at his face and hesitated. "Son, you know about the loyalty questionnaire?" "Yes." "You know question 27? Will you serve in the armed forces of the United States on combat duty, wherever ordered?" "Yes."
And question 28, will you swear unqualified allegiance to the United States and forswear any allegiance to any foreign government or power?
"Yes, to both." The recruiter studied him. "Your family's in the camps." "My parents, Crystal City." "And you still want to enlist?" Theo thought about his father's letter. The letter that arrived last month. The letter written on cheap paper in careful handwriting. The letter that said, "Prove them wrong, son. Prove who we are. Show them we are Americans, not by words, by actions." Theo looked at the recruiter. "I'm American. This is my country. These are my people. I want to fight." The recruiter handed him papers. "Sign here." Theo signed. Entered the United States Army on August 23, 1943. Boot camp at Camp Shelby, Mississippi. 12 weeks of training. Heat and humidity and drill sergeants screaming. Push-ups in the mud. Rifle range. Hand-to-hand combat. Gas mask drills. Forced marches with full pack. Theo was a good soldier. Quiet.
followed orders, scored expert marksman on the rifle range, kept his head down and did his job. His drill instructor was Sergeant Mike O'Connor, 31 years old, Boston, 2 tours in the Pacific, Guadalcanal and New Georgia. O'Connor had seen what happened when equipment failed, when training failed, when leadership failed, had watched men die from mistakes that could have been prevented. O'Connor noticed Theo during a radio repair exercise. The company radio had failed, communications down. O'Connor asked if anyone knew how to fix it. Theo volunteered, fixed it in 20 minutes, traced a broken connection in the antenna coupling. After the exercise, O'Connor pulled Theo aside. "Where'd you learn radio repair?" "My father. He had a shop in California." "You good with electrical systems?" "Yes, Sergeant." O'Connor filed that information away. 3 months later, it would change Theo's life. March 1945. The 96th Infantry Division was preparing to deploy to Okinawa, final staging at a base in the Philippines. Intelligence reports indicated heavy Japanese presence on the island. Expected casualties, high. The army had a problem. Japanese forces had learned from previous battles, learned that American firepower during daylight was overwhelming, learned that fixed positions during the day were death sentences. So they adapted. They attacked at night, small groups, 10 to 50 men, moving through darkness, infiltrating American lines, throwing grenades into foxholes, shooting sentries, disappearing before dawn. The tactic was effective because Americans could not see the infiltrators until they were already inside the defensive perimeter. Flares helped, but created their own problems, destroyed night vision, created shadows, gave away American positions. The Army needed a solution. Engineers at Fort Belvoir, Virginia, had developed an experimental system, the M3 carbine, an infrared spotlight that emitted invisible light, a scope that converted that infrared into a visible image. Night vision, the ability to see in total darkness. The technology was revolutionary. It was also experimental, fragile, expensive. Each M3 system cost $1,200 to manufacture. A standard M1 carbine cost $45. The Army had produced only 1,700 M3 systems during the entire war. In March 1945, the Army decided to deploy 150 M3 systems to Okinawa, distribute them among infantry divisions, test them in combat, see if the technology worked under real conditions. The Army needed operators, men with technical aptitude, men who could troubleshoot electrical systems in the field, men who could maintain battery-powered equipment under combat stress. Sergeant O'Connor, now assigned to the 96th Infantry Division, received a request. Division needed to nominate soldiers for M3 training, needed men who understood electricity, who could think under pressure, who could handle complex equipment. O'Connor thought for 30 seconds, submitted one name, Private James Theodore Brennan. March 20th, 1945. Theo was pulled from regular duty and sent to a secure area. Met 12 other soldiers, all selected for technical ability, all about to learn about a weapon system so classified they would be required to sign documents promising never to discuss it with anyone, ever, under penalty of court-martial for treason. The training instructor was Dr. William Harper, 42 years old, MIT-educated physicist, worked at Fort Belvoir's Engineer Research and Development Laboratories. Harper had been part of the team that developed the M3, had spent 2 years perfecting the infrared spotlight, the image converter tube, the battery system. Harper looked tired, looked like a man carrying weight. He began the briefing without introduction. "Gentlemen, what I am about to show you is classified top secret. You will not discuss this system with anyone outside this room. You will not write about it. You will not mention it in letters home. Violation of secrecy will result in court-martial, possibly execution for treason. Do you understand?" 13 men said yes. Harper unveiled the M3 carbine, held it up. "This is the M3 sniper scope. Infrared night vision system. Allows you to see enemy soldiers in total darkness at ranges up to 70 yards. They cannot see you, cannot see the infrared light, cannot see the scope. They only know they are being shot at
when the bullet arrives. He explained the technology. Infrared spotlight powered by battery pack. Image converter tube in the scope. Total system weight, 28 pounds. Battery life, 20 to 30 minutes continuous use. Then he explained the limitations. The system is fragile. The spotlight housing is sealed. Do not attempt to open it. The image converter tube is sensitive to shock. Do not drop the weapon.
The battery pack generates heat. In tropical humidity, condensation can form inside sealed units. If this happens, shut down the system and allow it to cool. Theo listened, understood immediately. Understood this was bleeding-edge technology. Understood it would work under ideal conditions. Understood it would fail under real conditions unless operators knew how to compensate. Harper continued. Most importantly, gentlemen, this system has weaknesses. Fog and rain reduce effective range by approximately 50%. Heavy vegetation blocks infrared, just like visible light. The narrow field of view means you must scan slowly. Miss a sector, and you miss the target. He paused, looked at the 13 men. The enemy will adapt. They will learn you can see in darkness. They will change tactics. They will try to blind your scopes. They will attack during fog when your range is reduced. This system gives you an advantage. It does not make you invincible. Then Harper said something that would echo in Theo's mind 3 weeks later as he modified his weapon in violation of direct orders. This equipment represents millions of dollars in research and development. It is classified. It is valuable. Under no circumstances will you modify, alter, or attempt to repair this equipment in the field. If your system malfunctions, you will turn it in for depot-level maintenance. Is that clear? 13 men said yes. Harper looked at them. I mean it. Do not modify this equipment. The Army engineers who built it know more than you do. Any unauthorized changes will void the performance guarantees and result in court-martial. Theo thought. The Army engineers who built this have never used it in combat, have never been in fog at 0300 with infiltrators 30 yards out, have never had to choose between following specifications and staying alive. But he said nothing, just nodded. The training continued for 3 days.
Range qualification.
70 yards. Total darkness. Man-sized targets. Theo scored 3 hits out of 5 attempts. Qualified. On March 24th, Theo was issued M3 carbine, serial number 0847. Issued 5 spare battery packs. Issued cleaning kit and instruction manual. Signed receipt acknowledging he was now responsible for $1,200 worth of experimental equipment. Sergeant O'Connor found him after the issue. Brennan, you understand this weapon? Yes, Sergeant. You understand it's going to save lives? Yes, Sergeant. O'Connor looked at him. My son's birthday is June 2nd. Mikey, 8 years old. I'm going to make it home for that birthday. Brennan, this weapon is going to help me do that. You make sure it works. I will, Sergeant. O'Connor walked away. That was the last normal conversation they had. 4 days later, O'Connor would be dead, and Theo would be facing the choice that led to everything that followed. March 31st, 1945. The 96th Infantry Division landed on Okinawa, secured beachhead, moved inland, established defensive perimeter at Kakazu Ridge, prepared for Japanese counterattack. The counterattack came that night. Not a frontal assault, not artillery. Infiltration. Small groups moving through darkness, testing the American lines, probing for weakness. Theo was positioned on the southern perimeter, M3 carbine ready, battery pack charged, scope calibrated. He activated the system at 2100 hours. For the first hour, he saw nothing, just scanned, watched green static, watched rocks and vegetation, nothing moving. Then at 22:15 hours, movement, 65 yards southeast, single infiltrator, crawling through grass, moving slowly, patient. Theo tracked him. The man stopped every few yards, looked around, listened, could not see Theo watching him,
could not see the invisible infrared light painting him in green illumination. The infiltrator reached a drainage ditch, used it for cover, continued crawling toward the American line. 50 yards, 45. Theo had to make a decision. Engage now or wait until the infiltrator was closer. Range was good, conditions were ideal. Clear night, no fog, standard M3 specifications applied. He fired. The infiltrator collapsed, did not move again. That was Theo's first kill. March 31st, 22:15 hours. One Japanese soldier, 65 yards, single shot. The enemy died without knowing why. Died without seeing his killer. Died, confused and alone in the darkness. Theo felt nothing, no satisfaction, no remorse. Just checked the sector for additional targets. Found none. Continued scanning. Over the next 3 hours, he killed 6 more infiltrators, all at ranges between 40 and 70 yards, all in total darkness, all without the enemy ever identifying his position. By dawn, April 1st, the infiltration attempts had stopped. 7 Japanese bodies were found in Theo's sector. 0 American casualties.
Sergeant O'Connor came by at 0600 hours, looked at the bodies, looked at Theo. "That thing works." "Yes, Sergeant. Keep it working. This is just the beginning." O'Connor was right. The next 72 hours saw constant infiltration attempts. The Japanese were testing American defenses, trying to find weak points, trying to inflict casualties before the main assault. In sectors without M3 coverage, they succeeded. 23 Americans killed over 3 nights. Defenders fired thousands of rounds blindly into darkness, killed 7 Japanese, lost 23 Americans, a negative exchange ratio. In sectors with M3 coverage, the results were different. The 150 M3 operators scattered across the 96th Infantry Division killed 83 Japanese infiltrators over the same 72 hours. Lost 2 Americans, both from positions the M3 operators could not cover. The weapon system was working exactly as designed, giving Americans the ability to see and kill an enemy that had previously been invisible. But it only worked under ideal conditions. Clear weather, no fog, no rain. The moment conditions degraded, the specifications caught up with reality. April 3rd, 1945, 2300 hours. Heavy fog rolled in. Visibility collapsed. Theo activated his M3 and scanned. The image was degraded, grey static, shapes visible only to 35 yards. Beyond that, nothing. Sergeant O'Connor was 60 yards to Theo's left. Different foxhole. O'Connor was regular infantry, no M3, just an M1 carbine, and his experience, and his hope that he would make it home to see Mikey turn 8. At 23:15 hours, O'Connor reported movement over the radio. Could not see it clearly, just heard something close, maybe 15 feet. Theo scanned toward O'Connor's position, could not see that far in the fog. His M3 was blind beyond 35 yards. O'Connor was at 60. O'Connor fired, blind fire into the darkness, into the fog, hoping to hit something. The shots echoed. Then silence. Then an explosion. Grenade. O'Connor screaming. Medic calls on the radio. Chaos. Theo tried to scan, tried to help, but the fog was too thick. His scope was useless. The most advanced night vision system in the American military could not see 40 yards in fog. Medics reached O'Connor at 0032 hours. Shrapnel wounds, both legs, severe bleeding. Loaded him onto a stretcher. O'Connor was delirious, kept repeating the same thing. Can't see them in the fog. They carried him away. Theo watched the stretcher disappear into the darkness. O'Connor died on April 4th at 0400 hours aboard a hospital ship. Not from the shrapnel wounds, from infection. The medics had stopped the bleeding, had stabilized him, but infection set in. In 4 hours, it spread to his bloodstream. By dawn, he was dead. Before he died, a medic asked if he wanted to send a message to anyone. O'Connor was barely conscious, barely coherent, but he managed 3 sentences. Tell Brennan, Fix the scope. Make it work in fog. The medic wrote it down, delivered the message to Theo at 0800 hours. Theo sat in his foxhole and read the note. 3 sentences, O'Connor's last words. Not goodbye to his wife, not a message to his son. Instructions to a private he barely knew. Fix the scope. Make it work in fog. Theo thought about Mikey O'Connor, thought about June 2nd, thought about an 8-year-old boy who would never see his father again because an M3 carbine could not see 40 yards in fog. That night, April 4th, 2200 hours, Theo made a decision. He was going to fix it, going to make the M3 work in fog. Did not care that it violated specifications, did not care that it was illegal, did not care about court-martial. O'Connor died because the weapon failed. No more Marines were going to die for the same reason, not if Theo could prevent it. He had 3 nights before the next fog was forecasted.
3 nights to solve a problem that Army engineers with millions of dollars in funding had not solved. 3 nights to modify a classified weapon system using salvage and improvisation and skills learned in a radio repair shop in a town of 743 people. 3 nights to break every regulation in the manual and save hundreds of lives in the process. April 4th, 1945. 0200 hours, Kakazu Ridge. 12 hours after reading O'Connor's final message, James Theodore Brennan sat in his foxhole and disassembled a $1,200 piece of classified military equipment by flashlight. The M3 carbine lay across his lap in pieces, scope housing removed, infrared spotlight assembly exposed, battery pack disconnected. The instruction manual explicitly stated that unauthorized disassembly would void all performance guarantees and result in immediate court-martial. Brennan had read that section twice. Then he had started taking the weapon apart anyway. 3 hours earlier, Brennan had walked the perimeter, examined Japanese bodies from previous engagements, found what he needed on the 4th corpse. An officer. Type 96 naval binoculars around his neck. Excellent optics. Better glass than most American field equipment. He took the binoculars, returned to his foxhole, disassembled them, removed both objective lenses, 42 mm diameter, precision ground, multi-element design, exactly what he needed. The problem was physics. Infrared light scattered in fog like visible light. Water droplets dispersed the beam. The solution required focusing the infrared. Tighter beam, less dispersion, more penetration. The M3's spotlight housing was sealed. Waterproof gasket, 4 screws. Opening it would leave evidence. Tool marks, broken seal. Anyone inspecting would know it had been tampered with. Brennan opened it anyway. Inside, the infrared emitter sat behind a simple convex lens, single element. Army specification, designed for general illumination, not focused penetration. It worked fine in clear conditions, failed in fog. Brennan measured the housing with a strip of paper marked in millimeters, 38 millimeters. The Japanese lens was 42, too large by 4. He would have to modify the lens. He had no precision grinding equipment, no optical laboratory, no proper tools. What he had was a file, a whetstone, and 12 years of experience understanding that perfect was the enemy of good enough. He worked by feel in near darkness, could not use bright light, could not let anyone see what he was doing, just a dim flashlight covered with cloth to reduce the glow. Held the lens against the whetstone, ground carefully, checked diameter, ground more, checked again. His hands started bleeding after 20 minutes. The whetstone was coarse, rough, designed for sharpening knives, not grinding optical glass. The edges of the lens bit into his fingers with each stroke. Blood made the glass slippery. He wiped it on his uniform and continued. After 2 hours, the lens diameter was 39 millimeters, close enough. He wrapped brass shim stock around the lens edge. Shim, cut from an expended artillery shell casing he had found near the gun line, cut it with tin snips, rolled it tight, created a 38 millimeter mounting surface. The lens now fit the housing. Barely. He secured it with a watch spring from his own pocket watch. The watch had been a gift from his father, given to him when he turned 16. Ted had saved for months to buy it. Brennan pulled the mainspring out and used it to maintain tension on the lens assembly. The watch would never work again. Did not matter. Keeping time was less important than seeing through fog. He reassembled the spotlight housing, tested the seal, checked for light leaks, found none. The modification was invisible from the outside. Only by opening the housing would anyone know it had been altered.
Total time, 3 hours 40 minutes. Total cost of materials, 50 cents, if you assigned value to salvaged components. Total violation of regulations, complete. Brennan reconnected the battery pack and activated the system. Pointed it at the back wall of his foxhole, 6 feet away, dense coral and mud. Through the scope, the image appeared normal, green and clear. He increased the distance, scanned across the perimeter. 15 yards, 20, 30, all clear. No fog tonight. Could not test the modification under actual conditions. Would have to wait until weather changed. Hope it worked. Hope the focused lens increased penetration. At 0400 hours, Eddie Walsh crawled over from the adjacent foxhole. "Brennan, you awake?" "Yes." "What are you doing over here?" "Heard metal sounds. Scraping." "Maintenance on the scope." "Yes." Walsh was quiet for 5 seconds. "You modified it, didn't you? That's what Morrison was talking about yesterday. The Japanese lens." You put enemy optics in American equipment. Brennan said nothing. Waited. Jesus, Brennan, do you know what they do to soldiers who sabotage equipment? They shoot them. Firing squad. And you're doing it anyway. Not sabotage, improvement. Division won't see it that way. Briggs already put out the order. No modifications. He finds out, you're done. Then don't tell him. Walsh laughed, sharp, bitter. I'm not going to tell him. I'm going to help you. What? You need someone to test it. Need someone to verify it works before you stake your life on it. Next fog, I'll spot for you, call out targets, confirm your kills. That way, when they court-martial you, at least you'll have a witness saying it worked. They'll charge you too. Let them. Walsh shifted position. His voice was quieter now, different. O'Connor died 3 nights ago because he couldn't see in fog. I knew O'Connor. Good Marine. His kid's going to grow up without a father. If your modification means that doesn't happen to more families, I'll take the court-martial. Brennan looked at Walsh. 19 years old, 3 weeks in country, hadn't even fired his rifle in combat yet, but willing to risk execution to help a soldier he barely knew fix a weapon that might save lives. Thank you, Brennan said. Walsh crawled back to his foxhole. Brennan sat alone in the darkness and wondered if the modification would work. Wondered if he had just wasted 3 hours and destroyed his military career for nothing. April 3rd and 4th passed without fog. Clear nights. Brennan killed 5 infiltrators total using the modified scope, at ranges between 40 and 65 yards. The focused lens performed identically to standard M3 under clear conditions. No degradation. The modification only mattered when conditions degraded. April 5th, 0200 hours. Fog returned. Brennan activated the modified M3. The difference was immediate. Where a standard scope showed grey static beyond 40 yards, he saw clear green images at 60. The focused Japanese lens cut through moisture like a blade, concentrated the infrared beam, reduced scatter, increased penetration. The modification worked. At 0241 hours, 8 Japanese infiltrators appeared, 40 to 60 yards out, moving in skirmish line, using the fog as cover. Standard M3 operators in adjacent sectors could not see them. The infiltrators were beyond effective range, beyond 35 yards, invisible. But Brennan could see them perfectly. 47 seconds later, all 8 were dead. Walsh's voice crackled over the radio. Not the usual calm professionalism, raw shock. Brennan, I just walked your sector, counted 8 bodies. Farthest one is 60 yards from your position.
Standard M3 can't see 60 yards in this fog. What the hell did you do to that weapon? Before Brennan could answer, Captain Morrison's voice cut in. Both of you radio silence.
Brennan, remain in position. I'm coming to you. The modification had worked. Now came the consequences. When the fog lifted at 0310 hours, Captain Morrison counted the bodies. 8 confirmed. All positioned beyond standard M3 fog capability. All killed by precise rifle fire. Morrison walked to Brennan's position, examined the M3, did not open the spotlight housing, did not need to. The results spoke for themselves. How many Americans did you save tonight, Private? Unknown, sir. Those 8 were heading for the command post. If they had reached it, we would have lost staff officers, maps, communications equipment, probably 10 men minimum. You saved them with a modification you made in violation of direct orders. Yes, sir. Division Commander Colonel Briggs issued that order. He's not going to overlook this. Understood, sir. Morrison looked at the 8 bodies, looked at Brennan, made his decision. At 0800 hours, I'm sending 3 armorers to your position. You will teach them how to replicate your modification. You have 6 hours. After that, you report to Division HQ for court-martial proceedings. Understood? Yes, sir. One more thing. Write down the instructions. Detailed, step by step. Materials needed, tools required, measurements, everything. Because when they court-martial you, they might also order this modification destroyed. If it's written down, it survives, even if you don't. Morrison left. Brennan sat down and wrote instructions on 3 pages of notebook paper, drew diagrams, listed materials, explained the physics, described the modification process in detail sufficient that any competent armorer could replicate it. At 0800 hours, 3 armorers arrived, Corporals Weber, Martinez, and O'Brien. All experienced, all skeptical. Weber looked at the M3. Division says we're not supposed to touch these. Division also says we're not supposed to die in the fog, Brennan replied. But Marines are dying because the standard system doesn't work. This fixes it. He showed them the modification, explained the principle, demonstrated the disassembly, walked them through grinding the lens, creating the shim, installing the spring tensioner. Armorer Martinez asked the important question. How do we know it works? Last night, 8 kills, 40 to 60 yards in fog. Captain Morrison confirmed this. Yes. The 3 armorers looked at each other, looked at the written instructions, looked at Brennan. O'Brien spoke. We do this, we're violating direct orders. Same as you. They'll court-martial all of us. Probably, Brennan agreed, but if we don't do it, more Marines die. Yes. O'Brien picked up the instructions. Show us again. Slower this time. We need to get it right. By 1400 hours, all 3 armorers understood the modification. Weber had already started working on his first M3. Using binoculars salvaged from a Japanese officer killed 2 days prior, following Brennan's instructions exactly. At 1430 hours, Corporal Frank Rodriguez arrived, not the armorer, another M3 operator, 28 years old, New Mexico. Rodriguez had heard about the fog kills, wanted to know how. Brennan showed him the modified scope, explained what he had done. Rodriguez listened, studied the instructions, asked technical questions, smart questions, questions that showed he understood the physics. This is unauthorized modification, Rodriguez said. Yes. Briggs will have you shot. I know. Worth it? O'Connor died because the standard system failed. His son's 8 years old, won't have a father. I'm not letting that happen to more families. Rodriguez nodded slowly. I want this modification on my M3, today, before tonight. Can your armorers do it? Ask them. Rodriguez walked over to Weber. Corporal, I need that modification. How fast can you do it? 4 hours per weapon if I work careful, 2 hours if I rush and accept some risk. Rush it. Fog's coming back tonight. I need to see in it. Weber started work immediately. By 1800 hours, Rodriguez had a modified M3. By 2000 hours, 4 more operators had requested the modification. By midnight,
12 M3 carbines in the 96th Infantry Division had focused infrared lenses installed, all without authorization, all in violation of Colonel Briggs's direct order, all because 3 armourers and 9 M3 operators decided that saving lives mattered more than following regulations. The fog returned on April 6th, heavy, visibility less than 20 feet. Japanese infiltrators attacked in strength. They had learned fog provided protection. They had learned wrong. The 12 operators with modified M3 systems killed 31 infiltrators that night, combined. At ranges the enemy believed were safe. 0 American casualties in the modified M3 sectors. In sectors covered by standard M3 systems, 4 Americans died, killed by infiltrators who got close enough to throw grenades. Close enough because the standard scopes could not see them in fog. By April 7th, word had spread. Every M3 operator in the division wanted the modification. The 3 armourers worked around the clock. Salvaged Japanese binoculars from dead officers, ground lenses, built modifications, installed them. By April 8th, 47 M3 carbines had been modified. By April 9th, all 150 M3 operators in the 96th Infantry Division had the fog-capable scopes. The impact was measurable, immediate, undeniable. Japanese night infiltration attempts in M3-covered sectors dropped 89%. American casualties from night attacks dropped 94%. The enemy was learning that fog no longer provided protection, was learning that Americans could see in conditions that should have made them blind. On April 8th, a Japanese intelligence report was captured, translated by Division Intelligence. The report described American night vision capabilities and recommended tactical changes. The key paragraph read, "American infrared observation systems now function in adverse weather, including fog and light rain. Previous doctrine assuming fog provides infiltration protection is no longer valid. Recommend immediate cessation of night surface operations except in final defensive positions. All units should prioritize cave fortifications where enemy observation is impossible." The report was dated April 7th, one day after the first large-scale use of modified M3 systems. The Japanese had recognized the threat immediately, had understood that their most effective tactic was now suicide, had changed doctrine accordingly. A 50-cent modification, replicated across 150 weapons, had forced an enemy army to abandon night infiltration. But Colonel Briggs did not care about lives saved. He cared about regulations violated. On April 8th, at 1600 hours, he issued orders for Brennan's arrest. April 10th, 1945, 0900 hours, Division Headquarters. Military police had escorted Brennan to the large tent at 0830 hours. Inside, 7 officers sat behind a field table, Colonel Briggs in the center, Major General William Parker to his right. This was not a preliminary hearing, this was a general court-martial, capital charges possible. Brennan stood at attention, combat utilities, mud on boots, cordite residue on hands. Briggs read the charges. Private First Class James Theodore Brennan. Willful destruction of military property. Violation of direct orders prohibiting M3 modification. Conduct prejudicial to good order. How do you plead? Guilty, sir, to all charges. Murmuring among officers. Briggs raised his hand. You admit to destroying a $1,200 weapon. Modifying, sir, not destroying. It works better than specification. Engineers designed that system. You're a private. You have no authority. Engineers designed it for clear weather, sir. Marines died in fog. I fixed that. Briggs's face reddened. You violated orders, compromised classified technology, created chaos across 150 weapons. General Parker spoke. Private Brennan, explain what you did. Brennan described the modification. Japanese lens, brass shim, watch spring, the physics, the results. 8 kills at 60 yards in fog. Modification copied to 150 weapons. Japanese night infiltration stopped. Parker listened without interruption. then turned to Briggs. "Colonel, do you dispute those results?" "Results are irrelevant, sir. He violated direct orders." Parker looked at Brennan. "Private, why did you risk court-martial for this?" Brennan met his eyes.
"Sergeant Mike O'Connor died April 4th from fog attack wounds, sir. Couldn't see the enemy. Standard M3 failed. His last words were, 'Tell Brennan to fix it. Make it work in fog.'" Brennan paused. "O'Connor's son Mikey is 8 years old. Birthday, June 2nd. O'Connor won't be there. But because of this modification, Eddie Walsh goes home to Pittsburgh. Frank Rodriguez goes home to New Mexico. Hundreds of Marines go home to their families. I modified the weapons so no more Mikeys lose fathers to enemies their dads couldn't see." He stood straighter. "My father is in Crystal City internment camp, sir, imprisoned by the government I serve because he has family in Germany. People ask why I enlisted. I tell them I'm American. This is my country. These are my brothers. I'll break any regulation to keep them alive. Court-martial me if you want, but make sure every M3 gets this modification first, because next fog, someone else's father dies." 20 seconds of silence. Wind flapping canvas, distant artillery. Parker spoke quietly. "This tribunal finds you guilty as admitted. However, Article 15 allows discretion when violations serve greater good. Sentence: reduction to private, forfeiture of $50, 30 days confinement. Additionally, immediate promotion to corporal for technical innovation, Bronze Star for valor, April 5th through 9th. Modification becomes standard procedure, all M3 carbines, Pacific Theater. Captain Morrison oversees implementation. Private Brennan serves as technical consultant." Parker looked at Briggs. "Colonel, we value American lives over bureaucratic compliance." Dismissed. Outside, Morrison caught Brennan. "You know why Parker ruled that way?" "No, sir." His son, Lieutenant David Parker, killed Iwo Jima, February 23rd, night infiltration. Died because he couldn't see in darkness. M3 program arrived 2 weeks too late. When Parker heard you improved M3 against regulations to save lives, he saw his son's death could have been prevented by someone like you. You didn't just save 800 Marines, you gave a general a way to honor his dead son. The modification spread beyond the 96th Infantry. Other divisions heard about it, requested technical specifications. By April 20th, 420 M3 carbines across 3 divisions had the fog modification. By May 1st, every M3 in the Pacific Theater had it. The Japanese never resumed large-scale night infiltration operations on Okinawa. Their April 8th directive held. They withdrew to caves, fought from prepared positions, abandoned the tactic that had killed thousands of Americans from Guadalcanal to Iwo Jima. All because one radio repairman's son from a town of 743 people had decided that saving O'Connor's legacy mattered more than following specifications written by engineers who had never been shot at in fog. But the victory came with a price Brennan would pay for the next 42 years. A price measured not in blood or wounds, but in silence and secrets, and a truth he could never tell. That price would begin on August 23rd, 1945, in a secure facility at Fort Belvoir, Virginia, when the government decided that some innovations were too dangerous to acknowledge. May 23rd, 1945, 03:12 hours, near Shuri Castle, Okinawa. James Brennan, now Corporal Brennan, crouched behind a collapsed stone wall and scanned the approach to the American command post. The M3 scope painted the darkness in shades of green. 3 shapes moving low through rubble, 69 yards out. Japanese infiltrators. Final desperate attempt as their defensive lines crumbled. Brennan placed the crosshairs on the lead man, squeezed the trigger. The carbine kicked. The shape dropped. Second man froze, confused. Brennan fired again. Down. Third man tried to retreat. Final shot. The man fell backward into a shell crater. 3 shots, 3 kills, 14 seconds. Brennan's last combat engagement with the M3 carbine. He had fired the weapon in anger for the final time, did not know it yet, would not know for 3 more weeks.
But that moment at 0312 hours on May 23rd marked the end of his war as an invisible hunter in the darkness. Total confirmed kills, 153, all at ranges between 40 and 70 yards, all in darkness or fog, all against an enemy who never saw him coming. The men he killed died confused, terrified, not understanding what hunted them, died without knowing that an American corporal with a modified scope could see them when they believed themselves invisible. Brennan carried those 153 deaths with him, saw them in dreams, green shapes collapsing, heard sounds he had never actually heard because he was too far away. But his mind filled in the gaps, screams, confusion.
Final moments of men who died without understanding why. June 22nd, 1945. The battle for Okinawa ended. 82 days of fighting. The 96th Infantry Division suffered 6,548 casualties, nearly half the division. But the casualty rate would have been higher without the M3 program. The after-action report estimated hundreds of American lives saved through reduced night infiltration casualties in M3-covered sectors. Brennan's modification was mentioned in the report, not by name, just referred to as Field Expedient Infrared Spotlight Enhancement utilizing salvaged optical components. No mention of court-martial, no mention of violation of orders, just clinical description of technical improvement and operational results. The war continued. Japan fought on. The army began planning Operation Downfall, invasion of the Japanese home islands. Projected casualties, 1 million Americans. The largest amphibious operation in history. November 1945, start date. The Army expanded the M3 program, ordered production of 20,000 additional carbines, planned to equip every infantry division, established training facilities in the Philippines and Okinawa, selected experienced M3 operators as instructors. On July 15th, Brennan received orders. Report to the Okinawa training facility. He would train the next generation of M3 operators for the mainland invasion, would teach them the standard system, would teach them the fog modification, would pass on the knowledge that had saved hundreds of lives. He reported on July 18th, met the training cadre, 12 instructors, all combat veterans, all M3 operators. Frank Rodriguez was there, Eddie Walsh, Eugene Harris, men who had fought in the darkness, men who understood what the weapon could do. They began developing lesson plans, technical curriculum, range qualification standards, maintenance procedures, everything needed to train thousands of operators for the invasion. Then, on August 6th, the world changed. Hiroshima, atomic bomb, 80,000 dead in seconds. The news spread through the training facility like electricity. Soldiers gathered around radios, listened to descriptions of destruction beyond comprehension. A single bomb, an entire city gone. August 9th, Nagasaki. 70,000 more dead. Japan's capacity to continue fighting was being erased one city at a time. August 15th, Emperor Hirohito announced surrender. The war was over. Japan defeated. No invasion needed. The 20,000 M3 carbines would never be produced. The training facility would never graduate a single class. Brennan and the other instructors celebrated with everyone else. War over. They had survived, would go home, see families, resume lives interrupted by 4 years of combat. But on August 18th, new orders arrived. All M3 operators were to report immediately to Fort Belvoir, Virginia. Air transport. Priority movement. No explanation given. Brennan assumed it was a debriefing, final paperwork, maybe recognition. The M3 program had been successful, had proven night vision technology viable, had saved lives. Maybe the Army wanted to acknowledge that before everyone went home. He was wrong. August 22nd, 1945, Fort Belvoir, Virginia. 143 M3 operators arrived at the secure facility. 7 had been killed in action. The survivors gathered in a warehouse, confused, uncertain why they had been summoned across the Pacific. Major General Clayton Hobbs entered. Army intelligence. His face was severe. carried himself like a man delivering bad news, and did not care about the reaction. Gentlemen, the M3 carbine program is now classified top secret under the Espionage Act of 1917. You will sign secrecy agreements. The terms are non-negotiable. He outlined the requirements. Never discuss the M3 with anyone, military or civilian. Never write about the weapon. Never mention it existed. Never describe the technology. Never acknowledge service as M3 operators. Violation would be considered treason. Maximum penalty, execution. Hobbs distributed documents. Acknowledgement of classified weapon system exposure. The key paragraph stated, "I acknowledge I never used this weapon. I acknowledge this technology never existed. I acknowledge any unauthorized modification I performed never occurred. I acknowledge violation constitutes treason and accept all legal consequences, including death." Silence in the warehouse. 143 men reading words that erased their service. Reading words that made their contributions vanish. Reading words that threatened them with execution for telling the truth. Frank Rodriguez stood. "General, we saved lives with this weapon. Thousands of lives. We deserve recognition, not silence." Hobbs's expression did not change. "You will receive neither recognition nor permission to speak. This is final." Eugene Harris stood. "Then we'll tell newspapers when we get home. People deserve to know what we did." "Then you will not get home. You will go to Leavenworth Military Prison indefinitely under charges of treason." 23 men refused to sign. Rodriguez, Harris, Walsh, Brennan, others. They were escorted to a detention facility on base, held in cells, told they would remain there until they complied or were formally charged with treason. 48 hours in detention. Concrete cell, single bunk, toilet, nothing else. Time to think about choices. Time to understand the government was serious. Eddie Walsh signed on August 24th. Came to the detention fence before he left. Spoke to Brennan through chain link. "Sign the paper, Brennan. War's over. Go home. See your family. Nobody's going to care about this in 5 years." Rodriguez disagreed. "They're erasing us, erasing what we did."
"I won't accept that." But one by one the holdouts signed. Harris on August 25th, Rodriguez on August 26th. By August 28th, only Brennan remained. That afternoon, Dr. William Harper visited, the engineer who had developed the M3, who had briefed them in March, who had told them never to modify the equipment. Harper looked older, tired, sat on a bench outside the fence and spoke quietly. "My son David died at Iwo Jima, February 23rd. I built the M3 to save lives like his. Built it too late. But you and the others proved it worked." He paused, looked at Brennan through the fence. "You did more than that. You improved my design, fixed the fog weakness my team missed. That modification saved hundreds of lives. I should thank you. Instead, I'm watching them threaten you with treason charges." Harper pulled papers from his jacket. "These are the official specifications for the M3A1, next generation system. We're developing it for Korea, cold weather operations. Different challenges than Pacific jungle." He pointed to a section. "See this? Focused infrared emitter, enhanced fog penetration. That's your modification, Brennan. Your 50-cent salvage solution is now official Army specification. We're manufacturing it into every M3A1, thousands of them." Brennan read the specifications, saw his modification described in technical language, saw his innovation becoming standard. "They're using your work," Harper continued, "using it without crediting you, without acknowledging you. They'll threaten you with execution if you talk about it, but they'll build it into every night vision system from now until forever." "Then why the secrecy?" "Because the technology is too advanced. Russians can't know we have it. Chinese can't know. If word gets out, enemy nations will develop countermeasures, will develop their own systems. The advantage disappears." Harper stood, prepared to leave. "Sign the paper, son. Let the weapon be forgotten. Let your contribution be erased from official records. Because it's not really erased, it's built into every scope. Every soldier who sees in darkness uses your innovation. They just don't know your name. Maybe that's enough." August 28th, 1800 hours. Brennan signed the secrecy agreement. He was the last of the 143, the last to accept that his service would be classified, that his modification would be hidden, that he would carry the secret for the rest of his life or face execution for treason. September 1945. The Army destroyed the M3 carbines, all of them, cut them apart with torches, melted them down, erased the physical evidence. A few were kept for museums, stored in archives with incomplete documentation. No mention of operators, no mention of modifications, just technical curiosities from a classified program. October 12, 1945. Brennan was discharged, rank, corporal. His DD-214 listed military occupational speciality as radio operator.
Technically accurate. He had been a radio operator before M3 training. The document made no mention of night vision, no mention of 153 kills, no mention of the modification that saved hundreds of lives. Medals. Bronze Star with vague citation for meritorious service in combat operations. Good Conduct Medal. Nothing specific, nothing that revealed what he had actually done. He returned to San Francisco in November. His father, Ted, had been released from Crystal City in June, had reopened the radio repair shop, same location on Main Street, different world. The war had changed everything. Ted asked about the war, asked what Theo had done. Theo told him he had been a radio operator, fixed communications equipment, standard support role, nothing special. The lie came easily, would become easier with repetition. They worked together in the shop, repaired radios, then televisions as the technology became common. The shop became Brennan Electronics, father and son. The business sustained them. In 1947, Theo married Catherine Sullivan. Everyone called her Kate, Irish-American woman from Sacramento. They had met at a church social. She was kind, patient, asked few questions about the war. Most veterans did not want to talk about their experiences. Theo's silence was normal. Their son, David, was born in 1949, named after Lieutenant David Parker. Kate did not know that, did not know her son carried the name of a general's son killed at Iwo Jima, did not know her husband had honored a man he had never met by saving others through forbidden innovation. Their daughter Susan was born in 1952. 2 children, a business, a home, normal life. The American dream that Ted had pursued when he immigrated in 1920. But Theo carried the secret, carried it every day, every time someone asked about the war, every time he saw news about military technology, every time he read about night vision developments. Korean War, 1950 to 1953. The M3A1 was deployed. Improved version of the M3. News reports called it revolutionary, new technology. Theo read the articles, knew it was not new, knew it was his modification, could not tell anyone. The AN/PVS-2 Starlight scope was introduced, passive infrared technology derived from the M3's active infrared system. News called it breakthrough innovation, game changer for jungle warfare. Theo watched television coverage, saw soldiers using scopes that descended from the weapon he had modified, could not explain to his children that their father had been part of that lineage. David, 16 years old in 1965, asked his father a question. "Did you ever use anything like that in your war?" Theo lied. "No, we didn't have that technology." The lie hurt. But the alternative was treason charges, prison, execution. He had signed the agreement, had promised silence, kept that promise even when it meant lying to his son. The nightmares continued, green shapes dying in darkness. 153 men who never saw him, never knew what killed them. Theo dreamed their faces, though he had never seen them, dreamed their confusion, their fear, their final moments. Kate asked about the nightmares. Theo told her it was nothing, common among veterans, would fade with time. Another lie. The nightmares never faded, just became familiar, became part of sleep, part of life. In 1978, Ted Brennan died, 82 years old, lived long enough to see his shop become successful, see his grandchildren grow, see his son build a good life. At the funeral, Theo wanted to tell his father the truth, wanted to explain that the skills learned in that shop had saved hundreds of lives, that the invisible electricity lesson had allowed him to troubleshoot infrared systems, that the salvage building had taught him to improve military equipment with 50 cents of materials, that the precision under pressure had let him modify a scope while bleeding and exhausted.
But he could not. Ted died never knowing his son had changed modern warfare, died believing Theo had been a radio operator. Nothing special. The secrecy agreement held even at the graveside. 1987. Theo was 64. The cough had started 6 months earlier. Doctors diagnosed lung cancer. Advanced. He had smoked since the war. Stress and nightmares and secrets. The smoking had been a way to cope. Now it was killing him. 6 to 12 months, the doctor said. Maybe less. Kate suggested he write his memories for the grandchildren, so they would know who he was, what he had done. Theo refused, told her there was nothing worth writing. The truth was still classified, still treason, still carried the death penalty even 42 years later. December 10th, 1987. Theo in the hospital, final days. Morphine for the pain made him delirious, made the filters break down, made him say things he had kept silent for decades. Kate and David at his bedside.
Theo drifting in and out of consciousness, mumbling. Green shapes. Couldn't see me. 153 of them. O'Connor said fix it. Fixed it. Car battery. Saved them. But they'll never know. David leaned close. Dad, what are you talking about? The scope. Modified it. Japanese lens. Car battery. 50 cents. Saved hundreds. But can't tell. Signed the paper. Treason if I tell. Kate held his hand. It's okay. You don't have to explain. Father never knew. Died not knowing. I proved them wrong. Like he said. Proved who we are. But couldn't tell him. Couldn't tell anyone. His last moment of clarity. Grabbed David's hand with surprising strength. I saved them. Broke the rules. Army made me sign. Can't tell. But I saved them. Car battery. 150 in 7 days. Tell your mother I saved them. Kate was crying. I know you did. Whatever it was, I know. Theo died at 0340 hours on December 15th, 1987, age 64, 42 years after the war ended. 42 years after signing the secrecy agreement. The obituary in the San Francisco Chronicle was 3 paragraphs. James Theodore Brennan, 64, World War II veteran and television repairman, died Tuesday at San Francisco General Hospital. Mr. Brennan served with the U.S. Army 96th Infantry Division in the Pacific Theater, earning the Bronze Star for meritorious service. After the war, he operated Brennan Electronics for 38 years. Survived by wife Catherine, son David, daughter Susan, 4 grandchildren. 3 paragraphs, 153 kills unmentioned. Hundreds of lives saved, unmentioned. Innovation that changed warfare, unmentioned. Just veteran, repairman, Bronze Star, survived by family. The truth stayed buried, stayed classified, stayed secret for 18 more years. 2005, 18 years after Theo died. David Brennan was 56. His children were grown. His mother, Kate, was 82, widowed, living in the same apartment where she and Theo had raised their family. David had taken over Brennan Electronics, repaired computers now instead of radios. Technology changed, the shop adapted. On a quiet Tuesday in March, David sat at his computer, researching family history, building a record for his grandchildren. They had asked about their great-grandfather, the Irish immigrant who built a business from nothing, the son who served in World War II. David knew the basics. Grandfather Ted immigrated 1920. Crystal City internment,
1942 to 1945. Died, 1978. Father Theo enlisted 1943, Pacific Theatre, Bronze Star. Died, 1987. But the details were sparse. Theo never talked about the war, never shared stories, never explained what he did beyond radio operator. David had accepted that. Many veterans stayed silent. The war was painful, better left alone. Still, for the grandchildren, David wanted more. He Googled James Brennan, 96th Infantry Division. Standard results appeared.
Muster rolls, movement orders, routine documentation. Nothing special. Nothing that explained the nightmares Theo had until the day he died. Nothing that explained why a radio operator earned a Bronze Star. David refined the search, added Okinawa 1945. More results. Battle summaries, casualty lists, division after-action reports. Then, on page 3 of search results, something different. A link to the National Archives, declassified documents, M3 carbine program, World War II. David clicked. The document loaded. 87 pages. Technical specifications, deployment records, operational reports, and on page 47, a list. M3 Sniper Scope Operators, 96th Infantry Division, Okinawa Campaign, April to June 1945. David scanned the names, alphabetical. Martinez, Frank. Harris, Eugene. Walsh, Edward. Then, Brennan, James T. David's heart rate increased. His father's name. But not listed as radio operator. Listed as M3 operator. Whatever that meant. He clicked the name. A detail page opened. PFC James Theodore Brennan, serial number 1942768. M3 operator number 0847. 153 confirmed kills, April through May 1945. Fog modification innovator, unauthorized. Court-martial proceedings initiated April 10, 1945. Charges dismissed with commendation. Bronze Star recipient. Estimated lives saved through modification, 800 to 1,200. David read the paragraph once, twice, 10 times, 20. 153 kills, fog modification, court-martial, hundreds of lives saved. His father, the radio repairman, the quiet man who fixed televisions and never talked about the war. David's hands shook as he picked up the phone, dialed his mother. "Mom, I need you to come over now. I found something about Dad." Kate arrived 30 minutes later. David showed her the document. She read it in silence, read it again, then sat down and cried. "He saved hundreds of people, and he told me he was just a radio operator. 40 years married. He lied to me every day because they made him lie." David requested the full file from the National Archives. Received 23 pages. Training records, combat reports, court-martial transcript, technical diagrams of the modification. The secrecy agreement signed August 28, 1945. An undelivered letter from General Parker, attempting to submit Theo for the Silver Star, but being denied due to classification. The court-martial transcript included Theo's testimony. David read his father's words from 60 years ago. "I'll break any regulation to keep them alive." Read about O'Connor's death, about Mikey's 8th birthday, about hundreds of lives saved with a 50-cent modification. Read about the threat of execution, about 48 hours in detention, about signing away the right to tell the truth. Kate read it too. Read about a husband she thought she knew. Discovered a hero she had lived with for 40 years without knowing. "That last day in the hospital," she said quietly. "He kept saying he saved them, kept saying he couldn't tell. I thought it was morphine. It was the truth trying to escape after 42 years. David wrote to the National Archives, asked if there had been medals his father should have received, recognition that had been denied. The response was bureaucratic, sympathetic, but limited. M3 program was classified top secret from 1945 to 1994. Operators were forbidden from discussing their service under penalty of treason charges.
Many received no special commendations because the program's existence was denied. General Parker attempted to submit your father for the Silver Star in 1945. Pentagon denied due to classification. Your father's service is documented in our files. That documentation is his recognition, even if delayed. David discovered additional documents in the archives, a list of all 150 M3 operators with status updates.
Of the 150 operators, 7 had been killed in action during the war. 139 died before the 1994 partial declassification. 4 lived long enough to see some acknowledgement between 1994 and 2005. 0 lived to see the 2005 full declassification that revealed the fog modification details specifically. Theo was among those who died before any truth emerged. Died in 1987, 7 years before anyone outside classified channels knew M3 existed, 18 years before the modification was acknowledged. Every single operator who used Theo's modification died without knowing it would ever be publicly acknowledged. Frank Rodriguez died in 1992, heart attack, age 70. Never knew. Eugene Harris died in 2001, stroke, age 78. Never knew. Eddie Walsh died in 2007, old age 81. Lived to see the 2005 declassification. Told his family before he died, "I served with the greatest Marine I ever knew. His name was Theo Brennan. He saved my life, saved hundreds of lives. Government made us promise silence. Now I can finally say his name." But Theo never heard that, was already dead, 20 years dead. In 2008, military historian Dr. Jennifer Mitchell published a book, The Invisible War: How 150 American Soldiers Changed Night Combat Forever. An entire chapter about Theo's modification, court-martial transcript, technical diagrams, impact assessment. David sent a copy to his mother. Kate read it, understood finally what her husband had done, what he had carried, what he had been forbidden to share. "The whole world can read about it now," she said. "Everyone except the one person who deserved to know he'd be remembered. Him." 2010. The Marine Corps Museum opened an exhibit, Night Vision, from World War II to Afghanistan. Display case with an M3 carbine, not Theo's, that had been destroyed, but a similar model, a placard. CPL James Theodore Theo Brennan, 1923 to 1987. Operated M3 sniper scope during Battle of Okinawa. Innovated unauthorized car battery modification extending effective range from 35 to 60 yards in poor visibility. Modification copied to 150 carbines division-wide despite facing court-martial. Estimated impact, 800 to 1,200 American lives saved. Forced to sign secrecy agreement, 1945. Lived 42 years unable to discuss service. Died 1987. Declassification 2005 revealed full contribution. Bronze Star 1945. Silver Star posthumous 2008. Kate attended the exhibit opening, 85 years old, walked slowly, stood before the display, read the placard, touched the glass case. A museum curator approached. "Ma'am, did you know Corporal Brennan?" "I was his wife." "Then you knew what he did, the modification, the lives he saved." Kate shook her head. "I knew for 40 years he had nightmares, knew he never talked about the war, knew something haunted him. But I didn't know this until 2005, 18 years after he died." She paused, hands still pressed against the glass. "He went to his grave thinking I'd never know, thinking his children would never know, thinking he'd be forgotten." The curator was quiet, then said, "He's not forgotten now." "No," Kate agreed, "but that doesn't help him. He needed to know it during his life, needed to hear it." Kate Brennan stood at the museum exhibit for 20 minutes that day in 2010, 85 years old, hand pressed against the glass case,
reading and rereading the placard that told the truth her husband had carried for 42 years. A young Marine approached, fresh uniform, couldn't have been more than 22. Same age Theo was at Kakazu Ridge. "Ma'am, are you all right?" Kate looked at him, saw the night vision monocular attached to his helmet, saw technology descended from her husband's 50-cent modification. "That Marine," she said, pointing to the placard. "Corporal Brennan, I was his wife." The young Marine's eyes widened, read the placard, stood at attention. "Ma'am, I use night vision every day. I didn't know someone invented it like this. Didn't know it started with a car battery and a guy who broke the rules to save his brothers." Kate smiled. First real smile since reading the declassified documents. He would have liked that, you know. Not the recognition, just knowing it worked. Knowing it still works. She turned to leave, stopped, looked back at the M3 carbine in the case. He died thinking nobody knew what he did, but he was wrong. The young Marine nodded. "We remember now, ma'am. All of us. Every time we see in the dark." Kate walked out of the museum into bright Virginia sunlight. Thought about Theo, about 40 years of nightmares she didn't understand, about lies told to protect a secret, about a truth that survived death. He knew now. Somehow she believed that. Wherever he was, he knew. And hundreds of men who came home to their families in 1945 knew too, even if they never learned his name, even if they never understood why Japanese infiltrators stopped coming in the fog. They lived. They raised children. Those children raised children. Thousands of lives branching from hundreds saved. All because one corporal with a car battery decided that saving lives mattered more than following orders. Worth it. Theo had whispered that in his deathbed delirium. Worth it. He was right. Fort Benning, Georgia, present day. The instructor writes on the whiteboard, Room 4, Brennan Innovation Lab. April 5, 1945. Corporal James Brennan, 153 enemies killed, car battery modification, 50 cents in parts, court-martial charges, death penalty threatened. 20 sniper students take notes. What's the lesson? A student raises his hand. Mission over regulations, Sergeant. Partially correct. The full lesson. Know the regulations so well that you understand when breaking them serves the mission better than following them. Brennan didn't break rules out of rebellion. He broke them out of precision, calculated risk, technical understanding, and moral certainty. The instructor taps the placard on the wall. Doctrine is the starting point, not the finish line. C.P.L. James. T. Brennan, 96th Infantry Division. Every scope you'll ever use carries his modification. Every night you see in darkness, you're using his innovation. He died in 1987, thinking nobody would ever know his name. The instructor pauses. Make sure that never happens to you. Document your innovations. Fight for recognition, not for ego, for the next generation, so they can build on what you learned. A student asks, Did Brennan ever get proper recognition, Sergeant? Silver Star, posthumous, 2008, 21 years after he died. Museum exhibit, books written. His name is taught here now, but he never knew any of that. Silence in the room. Don't let that be your story. The mission matters more than regulations. But your legacy matters too. Find the balance. Brennan couldn't. Class dismissed. The students file out. One stops, looks at the placard, reads the quote again. Doctrine is the starting point, not the finish line. He pulls out his phone, takes a photo, sends it to his father with a message. Learning about a Marine who saved hundreds of lives with a car battery, thought you'd appreciate this. 3,000 miles away, in a small apartment in Pittsburgh, an 86-year-old man receives the message. Eddie Walsh, the last surviving M3 operator. He looks at the photo, reads the quote, smiles. Damn right, Brennan, he whispers. Damn right. He opens his desk drawer, pulls out a faded photograph. April 1945. 13 men standing in front of a tent in Okinawa. M3 operators, training cadre, third from the left, Corporal James Brennan, 22 years old, quiet smile, holding an M3 carbine. Walsh had carried this photo for 65 years, through career, through civilian life, through the decades of forced silence, through the deaths of 142 other operators. Now, he was the last. The last man who remembered Theo Brennan not as a museum exhibit or a historical footnote, but as a brother. A Marine who fixed radios and modified scopes and saved lives and never asked for credit. Walsh picks up a pen, writes on the back of his grandson's photo. The man in this picture saved my life at Okinawa. Never forgot him. Never will. Make sure you don't either. Eddie Walsh, M3 operator number 0839, 96th Infantry Division. He puts the photo in an envelope, addresses it to the Marine Corps Museum. One more piece of Theo Brennan's story. One more voice saying, he mattered. Walsh seals the envelope, walks to the mailbox, drops it in. The last witness, the last voice, the last man who knew. Soon he would be gone too, but the story would remain. 50 cents, one car battery, hundreds of lives, and one truth that refused to die even when buried under 42 years of silence. Epilogue, 2010. Bundesarchiv, German Federal Archives. A donation arrives from the estate of Klaus Weber's granddaughter. Inside, a diary, written in German, April 1945 entries, historians translate. Page dated April 8, 1945. 5 nights of fog at Kakazu Ridge. American Phantom operates with impunity. We call him Nebelgeist, the fog ghost. 23 soldiers from my liaison company killed, all at ranges beyond 40 meters in conditions where observation should be impossible. Imperial Command ordered tactical revision. No more night operations. One American with auto-battery device changed our doctrine. I recommended intelligence priority on American infrared capabilities. Request denied. Resources unavailable. The war is lost. But this Nebelgeist will haunt military academies for generations. Whoever he is, he proved that innovation matters more than equipment. That one soldier with courage to break rules can change the course of battles. Klaus Weber survived the war, returned to Germany, became an engineer, died 2003, never knew the fog ghost's name. Never knew it was a 22-year-old corporal from California who learned his skills in a radio repair shop. Never knew the modification cost 50 cents. Never knew the American government forced that soldier to remain silent for 42 years. But Weber remembered, wrote it down, preserved it, and when historians found that diary in 2010, they added one more piece of evidence to Theo Brennan's legacy. Independent verification from the enemy. Confirmation that one soldier with a car battery had changed modern warfare. The ghost had a name now. Corporal James Theodore Brennan, the fog ghost, the man who saved hundreds of brothers. He knows now. 153 enemies, 7 nights, 1 car battery, 50 cents in parts, hundreds of brothers saved, 42 years of silence, 18 years too late for recognition. Never too late for the lives saved. In memory of the 143 operators of the M3 program who were forced into silence and died before the truth was known. Your innovations saved thousands. Your names deserve to be remembered.